They'll blanket you with Wi-Fi and profit off the radiation. Congregation collecting the people for that Satan. I keeps it blazing, cause I can read between the lines. I ain't blind, we unwind what they're really saying. Genetically modify what you're tasting. Loan you that college promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Programmed to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay to stay, kid. You're not for being born. Messengers are more than just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed. Disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of own nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
Sweet eternal balance of all those good, true, and beautiful friends. Tonight on Rogueways, we are swimming in goodness with a fellow lifetime pursuer of truth and wisdom in all areas: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and social. He has been probing the mass consciousness and the psychopathic forces trying to control them for his whole life, and has sought to unveil the master plan behind the curtain of public delusion through his podcasting, coaching, entrepreneurship, and public speaking, as well as his creation of Cult of the Medics. Welcome, David Whitehead, to Rogueways, and how are you doing tonight?
Lindsay, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great, fighting the good fight, and so good to see shows like yours out there trying to get to the truth and have these conversations, and I'm excited to have this chat.
Me too. I'm so glad. Thank you. And, you know, we're fellow warriors, or you call yourself a truth warrior. I call myself a rogue warrior. I think they're the same thing. So we're in good company here tonight. I do want to shout out all the supporters of Rogueways out there. You guys are the best. You keep it going. I'm so grateful. You can grab the audiobook of Sine Curve of Aeons and Audible if you want to help support the show, and also listen to an awesome audiobook. It's produced by Chance Garden, who is in the chat right now. Awesomely produced. He's such a high quality level there. You want to go check this out. You can also grab a paper version of any of my books at the shop on rogueways.org. You can get a little inscription from me in any of those books as well. You can grab some powerful orgone in there that I make as well. As it'll blow your mind. I didn't even believe in orgone accumulators, and then I made some, and I saw exactly what they can do, and it's pretty cool. You can also book a one-on-one session with me. I do all kinds of things one-on-one, so you can grab whatever is best for you and your soul. You can take a course on rogueways.thinkific.com. There's tons of courses there, and of course you can be just a supporter by subscribing on rockfin.com/rogueways, on subscribestar.com/rogue-ways, or on Apple Podcasts at Rogueways. And if you like, share, comment, tell other people about the show, or any of those things, just listen and love, send the good vibes, all of that stuff. I appreciate you for doing. I'm so grateful again. So thank you, all of you supporters out there. And of course, David, back to you with the pointless question of the episode, which tonight I was going to ask you, what do you think is the most sort of normal pastime that you have, since you delve into all these things that, you know, the vast majority of the public perhaps might think is like woo woo or out there or crazy or conspiracy or whatever? What's like the normal thing that you like to do?
The normal thing. Well, we've got so many normals now. There's the new normal. I can't even catch up with what normal means. What's the most normal thing? Well, I'm a dad. I've got two beautiful girls. You know, we were just playing some new Star Wars game the other night, so I do a little bit of gaming here and there with them. Is that normal? I don't know. What will be another normal thing that I do? I train in my garage. Is that normal? Like, I don't really go to a gym or anything. I just kind of do my own thing in my garage. I've never had this question asked to me, and I don't know why it's so hard to answer, but that's
I love it. Those are pretty normal things.
Yeah, mostly just work.
Yeah, that's pretty normal too. No, I love thinking about this because I feel like people could take like little bits of anything you've said or done, or what the content you've produced, and they could be like, that guy's crazy, right? But then if they know, like, he plays video games with his daughter, they're like, maybe he's not so crazy, right? Or we think of also, we have a tendency to do this in our community, where, you know, the normies are so, I don't know, different from us, or like they're a different category of people. And it's like, no, they're not. We're actually the same as them too. We just have all these weird divisions, and it's easy to put each other in those categories. So I like to bring it back, right?
True. True.
Well, were you always someone who was looking for the truth and a truth warrior?
Well, I've always been the black sheep. I've always been the kid with my hand up. I've always been the one that never took the first explanation given to me. Like someone would answer a question and I would go, okay, yeah. And then I'll go ask somebody else, just double check, you know? So I was always that. So I guess in a way I've never been normal. So maybe that's why understanding normal is hard. But I think it's just because I've always just had a really deep curiosity about life. You know, I realized early on that the adults around me didn't know as much as they pretended to, and that there were whole archives and libraries of information to look at, and that nobody was looking at it, yet everybody was walking around pretending like they knew everything. And I was going, like, I just felt that right away. I don't know if it's an intuitive thing. I don't know if it's genetic. I don't know if it's a byproduct of the way I grew up. I don't know, because there's just people out there that naturally gravitate towards questioning what they're told. And I'm not trying to question things just to be difficult. It comes from a deep desire to know what reality is, to know what the truth is, and to have people just leave me alone to do what I need to do and figure it out on my own time, you know? So I was homeschooled as a kid. I did go to normal school for a bit. Then I was homeschooled. And then that quickly just turned into me taking care of my mother, because she was in and out of the hospital my whole life with all kinds of health problems, because
Ah,
she unfortunately went to visit the cult of the medics and followed their advice, and it didn't go so well. So I turned into a process of educating myself, because I loved the process of learning, and I realized that I'd have to take it up into my own hands. And so that's what I did, as I have created my own mind, I guess, over time with the influence of some great people. And so I feel like my perspective that I have was earned over a long period of time, and it's still constantly evolving and unfolding as time goes, right? So that's a little bit about who I am.
yeah, I love so much of that, and especially where you ended there with, that it's still evolving. I think that there's so many times where people feel like they've arrived. Oh, this is it,
Mm.
right? I'm done. Here we are. Like now I understand everything, or now I see the full picture, or whatever. And it's not bad to honor in ourselves, this work that like you're talking about that you've done over your whole life, and to recognize that that's an accomplishment and that you do have so much knowledge and wisdom, and to also say, I hope I keep learning forever. I'm sure I haven't
Oh
learned
yeah.
everything yet, right? There has to be more. There always has to be more. I always say to people, like, or else we wouldn't be here, right? We would have like floated off into heaven or something. Like we know everything.
We would have ascended to nine dimension
Yes.
or something. Yeah. No, I guess I learned enough to know that I don't know Jack. Okay. That's really where I end up. So what I know and the confidence that I have just comes from who I am. But I also am very well aware that my perspective is limited, and that I'll never know it all. And so that's why, and I actually like that. I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable not knowing, you know? So there's things you can know and there's things you can't. And we're always trying to find learn about the things we can't know. But you have to stay humble, because in the grand scale of history and time and the universe, um, our knowledge is and our perspective is quite limited. So I try to stay on the pursuit and try to find what I feel are indisputable truths, but I always leave that door open for a perspective shift, because I've had many of them, and I expect there's going to be many more.
Yeah, and so I think like you said, it comes from that understanding your own limitations gives you this insight of like, okay, well then there could always be a blind spot. There could always be something I'm not seeing. Someone
Absolutely.
said once, anyone who says they're comfortable with not knowing, or anyone who said this is a separate one, but anyone who says that they're happy with change or like to change, those people are lying. And I'm like, what? Wait, but I say both those things, so and I don't think I'm lying. Do you think you're lying?
I'm not lying. I'm not
No.
lying. Maybe they're meaning like people that say that are comfortable with it are lying that they're comfortable. I mean, let's be honest, the pursuit of this and the challenge you're going to face when you try to learn this stuff is uncomfortable. There's a lot of uncomfortable moments, but maybe what it
Good
is
point.
that they're missing is that I have become comfortable being uncomfortable. And I
Ah,
prefer it, because I know if I'm getting too comfortable, I'm not growing. I'm not learning. I'm not becoming stronger. I think I got this from martial arts, doing that my whole life, is that that's when you're getting fat and lazy and bored and stupid. But when you're uncomfortable, that's when you're challenging, you're going to the next level, you're developing new muscles. So, uh, I am very comfortable with the uncomfortable process. I'll put it like that.
Very good point. You know the payoff. You've done the cost risk
Yeah,
benefit analysis and you understand that this discomfort is actually a very good thing.
that's right.
Y-
We need it.
So it sounds like that you're taking care of your mom was kind of the biggest wake up call. Not that you didn't already have this questioning mind and these things that lent you very good skills and traits to navigate that, but was that sort of the big like, oh God, here's the world actually.
Yeah, that's huge. It was watching what happened to my mother that woke me up first and foremost to the insane amount of corruption and misunderstandings that exist in the medical system. Because I grew up waiting in waiting rooms in emergency wards in hospitals,
God.
or sleeping in her hospital room with her while she'd be in the bed. She had numerous surgeries, all the drugs, everything. It was just always something going on. And I picked up intuitively that there's something wrong happening here. And she's not aware of it. So seeing your mother being blind to something was, I mean, that was a big thing for me. And I didn't even know what she was blind to. I couldn't put a name on. I just knew something was wrong. And then when I started to see that the more she went to see these doctors and experts and the more she went to the hospital, the worse she got, not the better she got. You'd think like, oh, you go to the hospital and the doctors and you get better. But that's not what happened. It got worse and it prolonged right to the end of her life. And I actually pin her early passing on this horrible approach to health that she was ensnared in. And so that was a huge thing. So I think through my whole life, I was always seeking an answer to why are we going to trust this medical system and these doctors with our lives? And it's not really working out if you look at the numbers. And yet we keep going back to them for more. And so that got me into it. And then a lot of my senseis and the coaches that I had, they were all very natural type people. And so they would say, oh, anything a doctors tell you, I'll tell you better. Like, don't listen to the doctors. Just come here. I'll do a couple shiatsu massages and you'll be better or something like that. And so they always had, I had that influence around me of you have to take care of your body. You have to do the work. This isn't just go to the doctor to get patched up. That's not going to work. They will slowly kill you. You know, that was the advice. So then as I grew up and I started learning more, I picked up a few books. People like Dr. Robert Mendelsohn, Eustace Mullins, so many others, whistleblowing doctors, the heretics, the heretics that came out and blew the whistle. And they would say, oh, in all my experience being a doctor working in these hospitals, I've seen that same thing. And so I resonated with it. And then I eventually started to collect all this information. And that's really how this whole Cult of the Medics docu-series had its origins. Was it was sort of a pet research project that I'd been doing on the vaccine industry, pharma, Rockefeller medicine, the history of the whole thing. I've had friends and family that have worked in the medical institutions. I've lost friends of people to cancer and watched them go from people who were told they had cancer. They looked healthy enough. And then within a week in the hospital, they would die. And I would be like, wow, that was a really fast acting cancer.
That was
Or
a
was
really
it the
fast
cancer?
murder.
Maybe it was the treatment, you know? So
Yeah.
I guess all those threads came together. And then, of course, 9/11 happened.
Mm,
And I guess before that, I'd always been into like comparative religion mythology. So
mm.
that always gave me the mind of looking at the world a little bit more philosophically. And then 9/11 happened. My wife was a political science major and was doing a media studies course. And she immediately, as soon as it happened, she immediately was telling me, hey, you can't trust the media. Like they're total shills for big corporations and government and everything. I was like, yeah. And I was 19 at the time that 9/11 happened. And I started to see the footage of all the stuff coming out that didn't make sense. And I went, oh my God, if they could lie about this, what the hell else are they lying about? And then my real journey began from there.
Yeah, what an excellent series of wake-up calls, what an excellent series of, internal mechanisms that you had that were motivating you through this, and unfortunate events as well that led you to look deeper, into all of this. So you have this very well-rounded approach to life and the world. Like we were listing in the intro, it's from our health and our body and our mental capacity, our soul even, and
Mm.
that's very much I think what people need right now is all of it. I think we're getting to the point where you can't just take a little bit, the whole tower is going to come crumbling down. So we need this really holistic sort of approach so people have something to fall into when they're falling out of the grasps of these psychopathic elite. Um,
Right.
yeah, it's so hard too now to watch just so many people being murdered by this system, more than ever, right, in the past handful of years, and not really be able to tell them or wake them up from it. That's been really hard too. I'm sure hard for you as well, having seen through it for so long.
Yeah, it is hard. I mean, it stirs my soul to see what's going on, especially with children. I mean, I definitely have empathy for these adults, but I have a different expectation for adults. I'm sorry. Like,
Absolutely.
if you're this old and you're still trusting these known liars and criminals with your life, and then you're doing what they're telling you to do with your kids, and then that's just something that's your responsibility. But with children, they're the innocent victims in this.
Yeah.
And for me to see, like, and personally experience friends of mine and people I knew and people I used to be in touch with go along with this program, thinking they're doing what's best, but slowly damaging their children through this process, psychologically, physically, right? It's unbelievable, and you want to scream in their face, but I can't, because that's not going to be effective. So I just scream on my podcast, and that's
Yeah.
what I do. And I try to do it in a way, and I've been really making this a point lately, that those of us in independent media, those of us who are waking up to what's going on, is this tyranny and criminality. We have to get really good at how we talk to people. You don't want to just I've made this mistake too many times. You walk up to somebody, they bring something up, and you dump them with the whole package of every rabbit hole you've ever looked into. It's just a turnoff. So I try to take the approach that I used to take when I was coaching martial arts, was you have to constantly think like a white belt, because you're dealing with white belts, people that are new. It's not a bad thing. It's just everybody's at different stages of the journey. And we have to find a way to boil it down into simple ways of communicating that people can understand. This is what the media did. They simplified everything so much that it dumbed everybody down. And then here we are, from this like mega vista of information and wisdom and knowledge and ancient traditions. And everybody's like, those people are too scary. I'll go to the simple narrative. It's easier. So I'm like, we got to make our narrative a little simpler and meet people where they're at. Because someone one day met me where I was at and gave me a hand and helped me. And that's why I was able to get to this level here. And there's still many levels to go. But I go, okay, now I have to find a way to duplicate that process. And that's how we can help wake people up. But other than that, you can't force people to know the truth. You can't become the tyrant you're fighting in order to try to wake people up. And in the end, their time will come or it will pass. And that's that's between them and the universe. All we can do is just keep putting it out, and those who are ready to hear it are going to come.
Absolutely. Spoken like a professional. I remember I always go back to this time where I was still a liberally leftist sort of type person. I was a communist, really, but if I was going to enter into the political arena, I was going to be like the Bernie Sanders person, right?
Mm.
And so I was there, but I was teaching in a place where all my students were heavily Trump, heavily red. And I was so confused because all I had known was communism or Democrats. Like that was my
Right.
life, right? I was either radical or like, at least in the blue. And so I was very confused, but instead of saying to them, like, why are you stupid? You should be voting blue or something dumb, or like you should be a communist or something. I just asked them, why do you like Trump? And their answers blew me away. And they were really, really, they had a lot of sense to them. And they were really practical reasons. And they were really heartfelt reasons. And they were things that rested on the things that all humans seem to love, like feeling safe and being able to take care of your family and all of these. And then I started telling people that they'd be like, oh, these Trump supporters are fat. Well, I don't know. Actually, I have a bunch of students I've asked them and they have really good reasons and they're very normal, good, caring people. So maybe you
Right.
should talk to some of them. But it just speaks to that, coming to where people are at and being genuinely curious. Why do you think this? And why? And not, why do you think this? But why do you
Mm.
think this? I don't know why you think. Like, I want to understand where you're coming from. And I never
Mm.
at any point was trying to convince them otherwise either. However, once you're talking to someone like that, you can ask some really good questions too, which can help people think. And I think that's one of the only ways to, if we're really trying to get people to consider something where we're at, I think that's one of the only ways to do it. Otherwise, they're going to randomly break and come running to us and go, oh my God, what is all this you've been talking about all these years? I need to know now. Those are like the
Yeah.
two things. And otherwise, like you said, I think maybe it's, we'll see where they go and it's their choice.
Yeah, it is their choice. And you're right. And I say that questions are what wake you up.
Yeah.
Answers are actually what close your mind. Because if you get an answer to something, and this is the mistake I've made and other people that are still asleep make, is that they took the first answer they were given and they run with it and they don't ever question it. Questioning is what leads you to waking up. So you'll notice that in my series, The Cult of the Medics, I ask more questions than I try to provide answers. And some people have emailed me and go, you're asking all these questions. Like, what's the answer? I'm like, you kind of have to fill in the gaps yourself, because I don't want to be that teacher that goes, here it is, like that's the only way. Because even the perspective I come from, there's many other perspectives on everything I bring up. So I just want to introduce it to people. And then there's a bazillion questions throughout the series, but they're smart questions, in my opinion. They're questions that open you up. Because if you have that question, if that question exists, that means there's still mysteries to be solved. The establishment doesn't have it all figured out the way they pretend they do.
No.
And so if there are questions that you pose that make people go, yeah, why is it like that? Is a good point. It makes the process work. So that's my new thing. Instead of sitting at the dinner table with people that are just trying to shout you down and going, let me go get a stack of facts and just dump it on your lap. That doesn't work for some reason. People don't want facts. So you go, okay, you just got to ask smart, intelligent questions. And then you just watch people. And when they realize they don't know the answer, they have to jump back to at least some equilibrium with you, where now you can have a conversation. Because the reason fights happen is because both sides equally think they are right and the other is wrong, meaning they believe they both have the answer. But somebody has to be wrong, right? So, or at least partially right and partially wrong. But questions are what open the door.
Yeah, this is also my thing that I love the most is questions, but also teaching people to ask questions. So I like to drop this little nugget again back to when I was a teacher. I started this thing and people didn't like that I was doing this because they thought it was so stupid. They thought it was like preschool or kindergarten. Like, why are you teaching high school students in this advanced class this thing? But it was the question asking technique. And the whole thing that we would do is learn how to ask questions, different types of questions, and brainstorm as many questions as we could about any given topic or just about nothing, anything at all. And it blew people away, actually, first of all, how they couldn't ask questions at the beginning. They didn't have questions to ask. And you think that I'm lying and I'm not. These are 18, 17, 16-year-old kids, and they couldn't come up with more than like 3 questions on any given topic. So by the time we'd finished, they could ask all these questions. Their test scores were higher, their essays were better, and all of these things. So that's not just right. So us asking questions of people is really important. Us asking questions for ourselves is really important. But if we're, like you said, we have this vast array and we can see everything, we may want to also maybe help other people learn to ask questions, because how many people are out there who really actually don't know how? I blew my mind. I couldn't even imagine that there were people who didn't know how to ask questions.
No
And so you're
kidding.
empowering people. You are empowering people when you do this technique.
I hope so. That's the goal. Because
Yeah.
you know what? Like, I'm sick of all the antagonistic, I mean, I'm a fighter by nature. I do get, I'm bred for that, but I'm kind of done with it. Like, I just want to get to a point where I can have a real human conversation with somebody. And everybody's in a thick wall of this mass formation psychosis, propaganda, mind control, whatever you want to call it. And you're not even talking to the real person. So I try to realize we're just dealing with an ego battle here most of the time. And in order to get to the real person, you have to stop trying to fight them directly. And you have to start trying to find a way to talk to the human being. And you still won't agree, but you will have at least made a human connection. And by showing that, the topic you're discussing almost doesn't even matter anymore, because now you're moving out of the battleground they're used to being in, and you're moving to a human level. And by calling upon that humanity, you're already starting to wake them up. You don't even have to give them facts about vaccines or whatever, ancient cults or human trafficking. You don't even have to go there. You just have to say, hello, I'm a human. I recognize you're a human. Let's talk.
Mhm.
And I'll empathize with you. And I'm not mad at you if you disagree with me. And I don't hate you. And I'm not going to go put you in a gas chamber because I have a different political view than you. Like, just calm down, relax. We're cool. We're just chatting. And it takes the edge off. And I found it to be more successful. I've also had times where it fails and they hate the fact that I'm trying to be real with them and they just become worse. But then I know, okay, these are the people I just have to walk away from,
Yeah,
sadly.
they can't be touched.
No,
Well,
no
yeah,
chance.
there's, that ego thing, but there's all these emotions around it. And people right now are walking around at this like high level of trauma that maybe we've never even seen before, right? Like it's
Mm,
always been some level of trauma, but it's been like rammed in with each world war and then each like Vietnam and then, the stock market collapse and then blah, 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 and all this stuff. And now it's like faster and faster than ever. Right. And it's just more and more. And I'm like, man, like we are superheroes that we can just look at it and go, like, yep, that's what's happening, and still be emotionally and mentally well. But all the people who are out there just reacting to this, like, it's a deeply emotional thing as well. So, what you're talking about, I think, is crucial. It's free therapy for all the, and not to say we're perfect or something, but just we have like a better emotional wellness. And so we
mm.
can offer that to people in whatever ways we can find is probably going to be really transformative for them.
It's crucial we do it, and you're right. I agree that and it's funny, the people I do talk to that do other shows, we all have our own issues we're going through with all this, but it's significantly different. I mean, you can see it in the eyes. You just look
Mm.
at people's eyes. I mean, did you see all those pictures of the masked moms taking their kids in to get shots and everything? And they're wearing it. They're just like, the eyes are just like and you can tell that's that like I've interviewed detectives and people who profile criminal profiles, and they talk to sociopaths and they talk to different, and they learned how to read body language. And there's different states of mind that actually bring that sort of wide-eyed, deer in the headlights panic look. It's panic, but it's not
Yeah.
a moment of panic. It's prolonged panic, like a prolonged anxiety that you can literally see by the way people's looking at you. And my old karate sensei be like, the eyes are the window to the soul. Always they'll tell you what they're gonna do. You look them in the eyes, and so I just look at that and I can see people are stuck in fight or flight. It was definitely induced by this massive propaganda campaign by the media, who knows exactly what they're doing. They know how to induce this panic. They know how to induce this mass formation psychosis. And so for us to just try to unravel that in a night is not going to happen. It's going to take a lot more. And actually, there's a lot of people, sadly, that are going to have to come up against it in their personal life. They're going to have to experience the trauma of it for them to wake up. Other people might be a little more open-minded, but this is why I've been telling people, do what you can with the adults of the world out there, but we got to focus on the teens and we got to focus on the kids,
Mm.
because they could still be reached. They're not
Yeah.
beyond hope, in my opinion. And
Mhm.
if they feel from you that you are more emotionally stable, that you're more centered, you're more grounded, you're more empathetic, like you're not talking down to them, you're actually kind of on their side, and they see that you're an ally, not an enemy, they will listen to you. I've just seen it because I ran classes for kids, for adults, for teens, and I've just seen that everybody'd bring that kid that never talked to anybody, or that teen that was like ready to cut their wrists, and within a few months, I'd have them back bright and shiny. And it wasn't because of any magic potion; it was just being human with them, giving
Love.
them a chance to speak, love, yeah,
Yeah.
the stuff that's missing from this world, and it
Mm.
helps. So that's where I'm trying to focus, is put the advanced information for people out there that are trying to learn about this. I'll pass on what I've got, but all hands on deck to save these kids. That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. I love it. I would have all these teachers who would come up to me and ask me like, how are you doing that with that kid who's like an asshole that everyone hates, like every year, multiple kids a year, I'd have teachers coming to me asking me this, and every time I'm like, I'm just nice to them. Like, I don't know why this
It's as
is a
simple as that.
mystery. It's
Yeah.
that easy. You just are nice. Just be nice. Like, yeah, but he's an asshole. Well, he's a kid and you're an adult. Like, deal with it.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Who's the
that's your
real asshole?
job.
Yeah,
Come on.
exactly. I've turned
Anyways,
kids like that into world champions. Like,
that's
I've seen it.
amazing.
And it's again, it's not like I do this crazy thing. It's not a secret recipe. It's, don't talk down to them,
Yeah.
respect them, and they will respect you. and then they're receptive. And then if you teach them one thing that actually works in the real world, they will listen to you. And this is why I love the martial art mats for this. Because when you're in a classroom setting, you can't always have that immediate proof in front of them that what you're teaching them is real, right? And so they just zone off. It's boring. But with martial arts, I could be like, you know, this is how you get somebody's hands off you and put them down on the ground, even if they're bigger and stronger than you. And they'd be like, nah, that's impossible. I couldn't do that. They're too big. And I'd be like, do it on me. And then they do it. And their eyes are like, what? And then that's the moment they stick around, and then they listen, and then boom, totally transformed. All it was that really got them out of that funk was the truth. They had direct experience with something that was true and real, and it worked, and they did it, which means it wasn't just me performing it, and it was out of their capabilities. Like I'm just some superhuman black belt that can do it. And when I show them, no, you just walked in this dojo and you can take someone down like me. Whoa, it's like watching them just suddenly stand up straight. And I used to just live for that. And I hope I get to open my dojo again and get back to that work. But for now, I'm just doing it online. That's all I could do.
Oh, I hope you get to too. That's such a magical thing that you get to do for the world. Those are the things too, when you can help a child, that ripples out forever into eternity, you know, like then who are they going to affect, and like, where does it go? It goes endlessly out there.
100%. Yeah.
So beautiful. Well, okay, I want to go back a little bit to the hospitals and the cult of the medics and this thing. And you know, some of us might be more familiar with some of that Rockefeller medicine and this whole thing, especially because of the last 2 years. But I wanted to talk about, because you also tie in transhumanism with all of this, and that's been one of my decades of screeching about the robocalypse and the transhumanist agenda.
Robocalypse, I like that.
Yeah. So it's definitely up my alley too. But how do you see these two things sort of dovetailing? Do you think it's always been part of the plan?
Really, really good question. I absolutely do. And I did. So the Cult of the Medics series is a take on the medical system that is really a remix of all these different fields of research. So you're not even just looking and studying the medics. You're looking at all the elements that feed into that. And you get into some pretty ancient cults, some secret societies. We get into symbolism, etymology. We talk about groups like the Knights of Malta, the Vatican, the Club of Rome, which are well above your World Economic Forum, you know, UN. Like that's all little satellite organizations that are like public relations teams that work on behalf of these bigger black lodges at the top.
That's a good description.
And so there's that. And then when you ask about transhumanism, which is where they're trying to move the world, and before I get to this, I just want to say, you know, there's nothing wrong or evil about technology itself. It's about how it's used and who's managing it and who has access to all the controls and switches at the end of the day. And what they're looking to do is they've been working on centralizing control, power, influence for a long period of time. These we'll call them the black magicians. They've been moving in and infiltrating key positions, and they're trying to bring one perspective of technology and the future of humanity out to the front. And they did it by way of getting the philosophy out first before the technology came out. And I paid a lot of attention to this because, like, we like to focus on the nanotech and the AI and the merging and the biometric cameras and all the digital IDs, which is great. We need to talk about it. But that wouldn't have been possible. No human would take that on board without them first bringing in scientism and materialism. Yeah. And that brought its way in through this is the long march to the institutions, remember? So they brought that in through the education and the media, where they're trying to get humanity in a left brain prison where they're thinking like robots first. So the first colonization that happened was a psychological one, and where they penetrated the mind, and they got the ball rolling with some of these big academics and big books and magazines and media and movies, and rolling out this idea slowly over time. And now it's sort of culminated into your people like Yuval Harari or whatever his name is, and Klaus Schwab and these guys, who are really just they're the priests of this new religion. And we've often spoken in the alternatives conspiracy world of the knowledge because of these old letters that came out from Albert Pike and these protocols and all these ancient things, or these old things, where they were talking about how they wanted to create a one world government and a one world religion, right? We heard about this. And everybody's got their speculations. What's the one world religion going to be? And I think it's just going to be transhumanism. It's scientism and transhumanism mixed with lots of elements from the dark occult that no scientist would ever admit is there, but is clearly there. And so when you have Yuval Harari, and I did a show recently called Ancient Transhumanism, and it's my speculation on the fact that what you hear people like Yuval Harari saying, where he's talking about how humans are now hackable animals. We figured out only yesterday how to hack humanity. And that's really what's going to be happening. And this could lead us to a digital dictatorship, as he said, or a scientific dictatorship. So he's basically telling you the plan. And then he's trying to say that this is all a good thing. This is actually evolution of humanity. Where I feel like, well, why would a species purposely make itself obsolete? It just doesn't seem to be evolution. It seems to be devolution. It seems like we're trying to erase ourselves. Or is something or someone else trying to get us into this self-destructive mode and have us believe that it's in our best interest when it's really not? It's actually a way of replacing us with some kind of a new human. And they say that it's a new human 2.0, post-human. They use those terms. And Klaus Schwab's right out there saying everything we've always feared. He's like, yeah, the Great Reset is not just going to reset your economy. It's going to reset you as a human. I mean, you got cybernetics and all this shit. I'm like, whoa, they're just saying it. So my question started to be, what if this is actually a project or a program that didn't just get dreamt up because now we have AI? This is actually a program that's been going on for thousands of years, going back to some ancient times that we don't really know much about, but you can actually learn about through studying many of the ancient myths, legends, and scriptures, and kind of connecting some dots. And what a really fascinating thing happens is when you say go into the apocryphal works of the Bible, like the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, all these things, and even the Old Testament, and then you compare it to the Bhagavad Gita and the Mahabharata, and you compare it to the Popol Vuh, and you compare it to Epic of Gilgamesh, and all these ancient things. And you realize they were talking about this. They didn't use the word transhumanism. They might have used other terms of chimeric beings that were part animal, part human, or demigod-like beings who were part God, part human. And I mean, what does the word God really mean? Like, that's just a word people use, but I think they don't really understand that the ancient mind was talking about a superior species that was doing something to the primitive species at the time. And then you pull out some old Zechariah Sitchin, or you pulled some of these old these guys out, and they've been talking about this sort of ancient astronaut theory. Other people look at it from more of a Gnostic perspective, where they think of it as there's been a sort of artificial intelligence that they call archons that have penetrated the minds of certain human beings and have influenced the course of events of history. If you talk to an average Christian, they're going to tell you this is a demonic battle. It's spiritual between angels and demons. And all these world leaders are just possessed by demonic entities. And that's why they're carrying out this anti-human agenda. I mean, pick. And then the atheists that believe in none of this are going to say, no, it's just psychopaths, and I don't really care which one you take. But what really starts to make me go, is the fact that there are actual signatures in the human genome that we've been tampered with. And that evidence is not something that just, that evidence is not just something that popped up recently. This would have to be something embedded right into the ancient DNA that we all carry, which means that this genetic manipulation happened in an ancient period of time. And that would be what? A process of changing maybe the Neanderthal hominoids into something else. And maybe that breach, that missing link, was a process of intervention by unknown agencies to upgrade the being, but also downgrade other parts of the being so that you could create a perfect slave species. Pretty big theory, but what it is it's looking at it, well, that would be the first transitionary intervention in human evolution. So that's transhumanism. That's taking a being, genetically altering it into something else by, for example, there's a bit of evidence you can look into, like the fact that we have 46 chromosomes, whereas all the other primates have 48 chromosomes. And for a long time, scientists thought that we just lost those 2 chromosomes until it was
Oops.
discovered that they were fused together. 3 and
Mm.
4 are fused together to make 1. So we didn't lose it; they just got fused. And that fusing can't happen in any kind of natural setting. At least that's the theory. And that means, okay, so they're right in the beginning of our DNA. There's something that was changed, and this alteration created over 4,000 different distortions, or what's the right word? There would be 4,000 different disorders genetically that we carry in our genome. Whereas, I mean, chimps or gorillas or whatever only carry maybe a few hundred max. No other species carries this many genetic disorders, yet we're still here because nature typically wipes out bad copies, right?
Yeah.
So it didn't wipe us out. In fact, we're the dominant species on the planet, and we stand out like a sore thumb compared to everything else. So I'm rolling this out to kind of give you some little teasers as to this theory that what they're saying about now going, all right, or they want to change us again. Maybe they already changed us once. They've kind of used that version of humanity to its max. And now there's a program in effect to alter us yet again. And this is what we now call transhumanism. But I think it's so old, it's new.
Absolutely. You're singing my syncretic song. I love it so much. We've had Gary Wayne on the show a number of times. It would be
Oh,
so
brilliant. He's awesome.
fascinating. Have you guys talked before?
Oh, yeah. He gave me, I've interviewed him many times. I put him in
Yes.
chapter 7 of Cult of the Medics.
How
And
cool.
he gave me a signed copy of his book. Look at this
Yeah.
thing. This
I
is
know. I've
massive.
read it.
I
I've
used
read
it for
it.
reference so much, and he does brilliant work.
He does. So that's really cool. I'm glad you've talked to him. And have you talked with Bruce Fenton?
Sorry, Bruce Fenton?
Yeah.
Not Bruce Fenton. I
Oh.
got to get in touch with him then. I haven't heard of
Oh,
this
yeah,
guy.
you have to. You absolutely
Okay.
have to. Okay, that's gonna be the best conversation ever. He also talks about this. He does come at it from the aliens' view, but he has more evidence for that than anyone I've ever talked to, and he ties in this genetic aberration that also ties with physical evidence that's all around the world of
Oh my
something
God. I want to
really
talk to this
massive
guy.
happening. Yeah, you have to talk to him. So
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it.
very
I want to
cool.
get in touch with him.
We'll make sure that that happens. Um,
Cool.
yeah, and I think this is one of those things too where people don't realize just how old it might be. And then
Mm,
if you start to see this, I feel like it's similar to like Pizzagate when when you started looking down that rabbit hole and you realize why I kind of always knew there was like pedophiles and especially powerful ones, but like I didn't necessarily realize like how open, constant, and horrifying it is, I guess. And
mm,
so when you fall down some of these holes, you can start to feel really disempowered, I think. And you can start to feel like, oh my God, if it's literally been hundreds of thousands of years of
mm.
manipulation so on the genetic level sometimes and on every other level too, then why even try? Why even keep going? But then I stop and I go, well, we're still here seeing through it though. So clearly
Mhm.
they haven't won yet. And clearly there's a reason for that. What do you think it is? What do you think that keeps us going?
Well, and I'm glad you said that. I think that this intervention that occurred was not just some kind of like space brother family that came to just help us along the way. I think this was actually a breach of natural law that
Mm,
occurred. And what that says to me is that this doesn't mean that whoever these interventionalists, transhumanists are or were, are the be all and end all, that they are our creators. I don't give them that status. I look at them as criminals. And I think that there's something even bigger than all of them as well. And the evidence for that is exactly what you just said, that you are here observing it and being repulsed by that evil and now taking the mantle up to go expose it, which means evil is not the only force at work in our universe or in this world. And that means that we live in a duality and that each being is given a choice whether they want to respect freedom and truth or whether they want to violate it for their own ambitions or whatever. And that there's a bigger karmic cycle that is embedded in this natural law where, I mean, I hope we see justice for what's been done to children, what's being done to humanity. I hope the biggest justice would be that the truth came out in mass, undeniable. Like that would be the biggest justice, followed by we toss all these violators back into the Atlantic Ocean where they belong. But the thing is that it will happen one way, shape, or form. Every single one of these criminals are going to have that karma come back to them. And all we have to do is create our own psychological and spiritual immunity from them, and physical, by simply upgrading us and knowing that a lot of what was shut off during this genetic alteration process is not completely shut off. Because consciousness, what makes up human consciousness, is more powerful than any physical form or anything they can alter in the physical space. It surpasses it all. And I've just had too many personal experiences to know that that is absolutely the truth, that the matrix can be broken, and that even though they seem like they're the most powerful people around, and they're so old and ancient and evil and anti-human, and they must be something not of this world, and it's just nothing we can do. That's just because they have really good PR. And the good guys have really crap PR.
Really
but they've
crappy
been with us
PR.
the whole time. Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't have good PR. We're
No.
getting shadow banned and censored, and they've been censoring the whole time. But here's the magic. Look at the side. Look where we're in right now. Let's just take the pandemic for a minute. During the pandemic, which they did plan, and they're carrying out a long plan, they made a lot of mistakes along the way, and they weren't able to button everybody's mouths that they probably should have. And so right from the beginning, we had people from within the cult of the medics themselves coming out to become heretics and expose the whole thing right from day one. And all I did was document all these guys coming out, and they were saying, yeah, you don't need lockdowns. No, we shouldn't be thinking about mass vaccination. No, we shouldn't be doing this. And the reaction from the establishment was to just censor and silence them and ridicule them. But that didn't work. People still in the millions woke up and listened to them. The biggest trends on Twitter, look at the trucker convoy in Canada, look at the Netherlands farmers. Those things happened during massive censorship. Think about that. That means, can you imagine how big it would have been if it had even a little bit of the media behind it, right? The mainstream media I'm talking. Think about how far we've gotten, even though we're being shot at from every direction. And then remember that when you go back through history, and I have a library here that my beautiful wife helped me set up, which I'm really glad, because my books were all just randomly everywhere and I was so lost. But now they're all here. No. And when I look at them, I see nothing but mavericks and renegades and heretics in various fields that you can read their book right now and you can learn what they had to say, which means something on a higher level is giving humanity a choice right now. Because if it was all over and done with, and these guys were really the most powerful in the world, why haven't they just done away with us already? Why do they still have to put money into lying to us and pretending like nothing's going on? Well, if you really have power and control, you don't need to hide anything, do you? You could come right out and go, yeah, guys, we're trying to set up a global fascist dictatorship, technocracy. We're trying to depopulate the planet. Sorry, you guys fell for it. Ha, ha, ha. They don't do that. It's all this like smoke and mirrors, cloak and dagger. We got to hide. Only cowards hide. Only people who are in a weak position on the battlefield hide, right? So what does that tell you? That tells me that they're not the only guys on the chessboard. We have us regular Joes and Janes waking up all over the world and trying to help people. And then we do have people, I think, that are either already awake or are waking up within even their own establishments, within their own secret societies, within their own churches and orders and governments and media. And that is part of a massive cycle that we are in astrologically as well, that goes well above the head of some, dark cult somewhere on the planet that likes to pretend they're mostly the powerful ones. So I just tell people all the time, you're going to go down some dark, scary hallways. It's going to seem hopeless. But what that does is actually inspire you and motivate you to become stronger. And then their power starts to fade when your power increases. And then I do it and you do it and two more people do it. And look where we are. These people, the amount of holes coming out in their arguments, in their narratives, in all of their scams are being shown to the world right now in a way that I have never seen. And I've been in this for about 20 years. I can tell you've been in this for a while too. And I just go, I've never seen this kind of like mass
Never.
awakening on at least the basic level, right? And I think it's only just beginning. And yes, it took trauma and tragedy and the exposure of evil to make this happen, but maybe that's part of a bigger dynamic of the universe correcting an imbalance. And it takes time, but it is happening. And I think we're about to see some really great things take place within our lifetimes, probably sooner rather than later.
Man, that just whole speech that you just gave, it should like the best motivational. We need to clip that and just like send it around the world. It was really powerful.
I believe it. I believe
Yeah,
it.
that's awesome. Well, I also would love to hear if you want to share any of those personal experiences or like a really juicy one, maybe that you were talking about that proves, how powerful our consciousness is. Because I think you're absolutely right. I think most people have had, experiences, even if they're tiny experiences of their consciousness, being more powerful than what we're told material reality is, or at least being able to influence it significantly, including, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, whether or not I feel like people are becoming more and more whatever we want to call psychic or,
Mm.
empathic or intuitive. And I feel like that's part of this, larger astrological time or energetic time or whatever we want to call that, because it is more and more people just seem to have it. I will find people like speaking my thoughts back to me all the time now. Right? It used to happen sometimes, and now it happens like constantly, even and especially from people who would not consider themselves psychic at all. So I don't know if you've noticed that, and then if you also maybe want to share any of those experiences that you've had.
Well, sure. I mean, there's many little ones, big ones. And I've noticed the same thing that especially the people in our sort of community that are really taking the time and the care to not only research what's going on in the world, but you'll notice those types of people are doing a lot of personal development work and shadow work and health work. And like, there's an instinctual thing we have when we're up against the wall, we try to become stronger. And so when you start meeting those people and talking to them, I find we're all finishing each other's sentences. We might disagree on little things here or there, but in large part, we all see what's going on. We're already kind of at that stage. And I find it's easier actually when somebody does try to wake up to this, I can get them up to speed way faster than I was brought up to speed. So I feel like there's momentum that's happening. It's like a 100th monkey thing or something.
Yeah.
Or if you think of Rupert Sheldrake, his breakdown of the morphinogenic field and how there's signals that carry beyond, physical matter and all that. I believe it. And when it comes to experience, me being here, doing this work, talking to you right now is already evidence because when I was growing up, I went through a lot of traumatic experiences psychologically, just based on my upbringing and what was going on. I don't need to get into that. But what it is I started when I was like 18, 17, yeah, maybe even earlier, 16, 17. I got to a point of depression and confusion and anger that I started thinking more suicidal type thoughts. My parents didn't know what to do, so they brought me into the cult of the medics. And here I am, 16 years old, and they're prescribing things like Paxil and Ativan and these types of things. And then it was after those drugs that I started thinking suicidal thoughts.
Ah,
And you start reading the label and you realize, oh shit, suicidal tendencies is like one of the side effects. Weird. But
yeah.
it's also the inner crisis that was going on, where I hit a wall, where I was much more put together when I was younger, and then in my teen kind of weird phase there, it got out of whack. And then I had to have the experience of them presenting this solution that just made it worse. And then I decided, it was the advice of my karate sensei, again, God love him, who said, you don't need any of this shit. You don't need to be in these hospitals. You don't need to be taking this medication. You don't need to do this. You're a fighter. You're a warrior. You're better than that. Let me come live with me. So he let me move in with him. And I lived with him. I trained with him. I helped him clean the dojo every day. He would sit down and talk to me about anger management stuff and like the purpose of life. And then it was through martial arts that I found something new. I got off these medications within less than 3 months. I totally cleaned everything up. And I found the core energy field that I felt like I was disconnected from. And all of a sudden, my whole life changed. And ever since and there was many other factors to it, but ever since that period of time, by the time I turned 19 and I met my wife for the first time, who we're still together, I was a totally different person. And I've never gone back to that anxiety or fear or depression ever again since in my life. And if anything, I'm just getting more access to that energy that I needed to get access to. And that's why I do what I do. So me being here is a product of a miracle that all the doctors and scientists would tell you can never happen. And it was all, yes, somebody helped me, and yes, somebody inspired me, but I had to do the work. I had to do the shadow work. And when I did it, it was like chains fell off me. A veil was lifted. And then I started actually feeling like I would go into certain places and I would start feeling more energy. Like I was more sensitive to that. Like when I went to England and I started going to places like the Tower of London or Buckingham Palace or Cleopatra's Needle or whatever, I would just look around. I would feel the place. I wasn't consciously trying to. I would just go, oh, Tower of London, this is some dark shit going on here. This is a horrible place. And then you go to Stonehenge or you go to some ancient stone temple somewhere and you feel the energy of that place and it's totally positive. It's a different feeling. And I had that after this trauma that I experienced. I didn't have it before. So it was like the trauma and going through that dark night upgraded something, or maybe gave me access to something I didn't know I had. And then I was able to then feel more of that and have more intuition. And I feel like intuition to this day is what guides 90% of what I do. I mean, I do the research, I do the logical thinking, but a lot of it is intuitive. And I think it only happened because that intuition was born out of some battles that I had to win when I was young. So that alone to me is evidence that there's a higher field that we have access to that. And then of course, when you're like me and you've been challenging all the dogmas and status quos your whole life, you get a lot of shunning from your family, from your friends. You have to become the outsider. You have to become the individual. And that's a hard process. Drives a lot of people crazy, actually. And for some reason, it's only made me better. I feel like I've attracted, also, there's another aspect of it. I've attracted better people into my life than what I had around me before. And all that changed wasn't the people, it was me that changed. And then that changed. I can tell you a more specific one where I was doing my 3rd degree black belt exam. And it was a really brutal one. Like my sensei was almost sadomasochistic. He just loved seeing, well, how far can I push this guy before he throws up or whatever. And we were doing this crazy test. It was like 7 hours in. Like it was just at this, and it's at such a high pace. And I'm asked to now do like these very intricate, like bow staff and like nunchucks and like really intricate stuff. And I'm sitting there, I can barely stand. And I feel like I'm just going to like pass out. That's how exhausted I was. And I remember even asking coach, could I just grab like 10 seconds to get some water? And he just looks at me, he's like, no. I'm like, damn it. So I just had to find a gear. And I'll never forget that there was a moment where I was so like woozy and like tired that I feel like I popped out a little bit and was looking down at myself for a brief moment. And then boom, came back to full consciousness and ended up just crushing the end of my test. Like it sounds like kind of meaningless, but for me, it was evidence that my body was telling me what it's supposed to tell me, which is you're overheating, systems are overheating, you're tired, but that your consciousness, when you tap into that, when you've depleted the physical, there's another gear that you don't know you have unless you've pushed yourself to that wall. And then after that happened, I now was conscious that I had this ability to go more than I thought I could go. And I never did it stupidly or anything, but there were many other experiences where I would feel like almost like something else took over. Not something else, more like the real me took over. That's how it didn't feel foreign. Like it felt like the real me took over. And then I performed in ways that I could never reproduce after. Like I couldn't do it again, like landing like a head scissor takedown on someone in live sparring. Like you never do that, but it happens when you're in that zone. And that zone is to me an example of that consciousness that we all can tap into that is far superior to just your physical genetic structure. It's another level that you have. And then, I've had my share of ghosts and weird paranormal and had some weird freaky stuff happen in Hollywood. And nothing too crazy, but just questionable, like, interesting. And, then the more I interviewed other people, I had a couple of UFO sightings, nothing crazy, but just like little things I couldn't explain. And I realized, okay, I know enough to know that there is so much more going on out there than we can even imagine. And we have so much more potential. And I know we have potential just because of how interested these dark sorcerers are in us. And that kind
Yeah.
of tells me everything we need to know. We're special.
That is a great point and a great set of illustrations to show it. Do you feel like when you pop out and you get to that level of consciousness beyond your physical body at that point of exhaustion? For me, at least, a similar experience I had was like that part of me was like, "Oh my God, thank God, finally! Like it's finally happened, right? Like this is why we're all our oversoul or whatever you want to call that is like waiting. Like, come on, you could do
Yeah.
it. Like
Yeah,
that's how
I
I
felt
felt when
like
I
that a bit. I mean, I guess I just felt the relief of for a moment, you just go, oh, that's better." And then you, "Oh, wait a
yeah,
minute, why am I up here?" And then I'm back to reality. It happened so quick,
so
but it did
quick.
happen. And I talk to people that claim they can do this by will, they can do this regularly. Like, I don't know, but I
I
think
believe
that
it.
there's something else going on there for sure.
Yeah. I also love, when you're talking about that, this is what I teach in my spiritual teaching as well. That the spiritual path is the healing path. People that always want to know, like, well, how do I get more empathic, or how do I get more psychic, or how do I get these abilities? And I'm like, well, there's a million ways, right? But one thing that's definitely true is that if you're healing emotionally, spiritually, or sorry, physically, mentally, all of these things, you will tap into those things more easily. So you're describing
Yeah.
that, like being able to feel this more and like without even really trying, that's exactly how it is. You healing happens inside, right? And that is where you're clearing this channel. The channel's already there, and 100% of people have it.
And I
Some
think so
people,
much of what we're putting in our bodies, what we're exposed to our environment, these heavy metals, these chemicals, these shots, these drugs, this whole thing, everything is becoming unnatural around us. And that is actually blocking what is an innate ability that we have to tap into the resources of what Nikola Tesla was talking about, how in 1 square inch of space there's enough energy to power a planet. Like there's a field of energy that's there, call it the force or whatever. And
yeah,
when you just get little brushes and little glimpses of it, and you pay attention, you'll start to notice that you clean up your diet, you deal with your inner anxiety and maybe past trauma, you do your dark shadow work and all that. All of a sudden you're like accessing new abilities. You're physically, as an athlete, I noticed that when my anxiety level dropped after going through these experiences and I felt more strength from it, my physical performance got better. Like I
okay.
could run for longer, I could punch harder, I could do more. And I was like, wow. And it's because something in me was holding myself back. And then the more you clear out all those toxins,
Yeah.
you suddenly feel so bright, shiny, and energetic. You're like, how come I'm not feeling like this all the time? And,
Yes.
so I feel like so much of what we think is some hopeless situation in what we're dealing with is actually literally just a belief system that we've adopted that serves that very agenda and those same dark forces. But if we realize what these great teachers and brilliant sages have told us from ancient times right into modern times, that you are far more than you think you are. But it's like in the Matrix, belief isn't going to cut it. You have to know. You have to know. You can't think you are. You have to know you are. And we have so much more potential, and they don't want you to know that. They want you to believe that the only way for you to be happy, healthy, and all that is if you take drugs, take our vaccines, integrate with AI and technology, because the human package just isn't good enough, and
Yeah.
we can Bill Gates knows how to upgrade it. And so when we stop listening to those liars and we go, no, 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 I'm going to go to these naturalists. I'm going to go to these great teachers that told us about the somatic intelligence or the orgone, Wilhelm Reich or any Walter Russell, and that I'm going to go listen to them and see if it changes my life. Well, let me tell you, it absolutely did. And what they were talking about is more real than all of that materialist scientism you're going to hear. And I'm also living proof that I survived this massive pandemic, flu, killer virus, whatever, by simply just being natural and healthy and keeping a positive energy. And I'm not sick and dying. And I think that when we can pull our head out of all these lies, the truth is going to actually activate more than just the knowledge of the truth. It's going to activate the full toolbox that we should have had access to from the beginning.
Amen. I love it. Beautiful. I really want you to tell people too where they can go find Cult of the Medics and watch it and see it, as well as all the other things that you have to offer. So tell people what the best things to do are.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate it. This was a fun conversation.
Very cool.
You can go watch the series right now for free. I've got 8 chapters completed. Each chapter is about 200 to 300 hours of editing and work and whatever. So I'll have chapter 9 coming out soon, but they're available for free. And you can get them all at cultofthemedics.com. And if you'd please share it out, it would do a lot. I think this information can really help wake people up and inspire people. It's not all doom and gloom either. It's a lot of positive, empowering warrior stuff in there. I try to balance it out. And chapter 9 is going to be coming out. I'm working on it in the fall. So when it's done, I'll let everybody know. And it's going to be a very empowering, battle cry, solution loaded chapter that is going to be really, really cool. So I can't wait for that. If they want to get my podcast, I do a live podcast now twice a week. And you can get access to all that and all my channels at dwtruthwarrior.com. It's my main website. And then if you would like to get in touch with my premium show that I do with my colleague, Michael Tessarian, who hails from Ireland. He's one of my mentors and he's just a great, great guy. You can get that at unslaved.com. And there is a price for it, but every penny's worth it. I promise you. We have an archive of exclusive and unique research that you will not find anywhere else. And it's all over at unslaved.com.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And what are your final thoughts or messages you want to share with people before we say goodnight?
Don't lose hope. There's many good things happening. Every time you read something about some horrible thing happening, I guarantee there's another good thing happening somewhere that you're not being told about. So we are in a war, that's for sure. We're not out of the woods yet. Got it. But we can win, because if you're on the side of truth, unseen forces come to aid. I think they're here. We're not alone in this. And there are people that love freedom, truth, and justice that are fighting all over the world. I talk to them all the time. And I think we need to have a positive mindset as we continue this war. And this is a battle for the mind and for the soul. And if you can center yourself, keep yourself healthy, learn that freedom is an inside job. The world's not going to give it to you. Health is an inside job. The doctors aren't going to give it to you. And if you want to create a better world, start right now. This is what I'm trying to do, is start living the world and the life that I want for me and my kids and my family. And I recommend other people do it. And if we team up on this and we keep this positive energy going out and we keep exposing the lies, then truth is going to win and humanity is going to win. And these transhumanists, they're going to be gone, and we're going to have a beautiful future. And that's my goal, and that's what I'm fighting for. So join me in that fight.
Beautiful. And fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. And this has been your analog electric concentric dose of wisdom, according to the transhuman resistor, David Whitehead. David, thank you so much for sharing with us tonight.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thanks everybody for watching.
It's been a pleasure. I'm sure we'll chat again. And tinkering throughout time, we find the transhumanists have always had one goal: the complete destruction and enslavement of humanity, soul, heart, mind, and body. They are masters at this craft and have untold wealth and influence behind their goals, circling the entirety of this planet for all of recorded history and perhaps beyond. So why haven't they won yet? They haven't won because humanity is intricately intertwined with this nebulous substance called soul. And we cannot be destroyed without first choosing to give that beautiful energy away. Remember to keep your soul above all else, no matter the supposed physical, mental, or emotional traps sprung upon you. And until you remember that the only thing that's ever mattered is indestructible and untarnishable, within you forever and ever, world without end. Travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.
basic as that simple.
And the question is, how are we going to really almost deprogram these people?
These extremists, authoritarians, fascists, bigots, racists, nativists, even libertarians.
They're not wearing masks.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories. Oversensitize them to what we have to do.
Potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
We've made it our mission to limit the spread of this disease and to limit the risk to lives and to our economy. We've been clear from the beginning that getting together in groups outside of your household that is not permitted is not allowed.
And we need to make it clear to them that the vaccine is the ticket back to pre-pandemic life. And the window to do that is very narrow.
This nation, this idea called America, was and always will be a new world. Our new world.
Today, we're taking steps to confront not just the COVID crisis, but what is actually a public health crisis.
They're not wearing masks.
You know the old expression about snitches? Well, in this case, snitches get rewards. We want to thank you for turning folks in and making sure we are all safe.
Are you proposing taking away their guns, and how would this work? I am.
I'ma have a